Welcome to the Thursday, April 13th meeting of the City of Gainesville General Policy Committee. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, our first item is the adoption of the agenda.
There's a motion to adopt the agenda and a second. Any comments on that up here? Nope. All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, it's unanimous. We have an agenda.
Mr. Mayor, our next item is the approval of the minutes for March 23rd, 2023 GPC, with the recommendation that the committee approve these minutes.
Do we have a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the minutes. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we have minutes as well. Rolling right along.
Our first item is our business discussion items. Item number 2023-335, GRU debt reduction and targeted capitalization rates and proposed government services contribution formula, with the recommendation that the committee approve the recommended GSC formula methodology, and two, approve a 10-year period to reach the 70% target capitalization rate.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Cunningham, you're the lead on this.
Yes, so Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, as we all are keenly aware and have been experiencing for the last several months, there is a lot of discussion that has occurred, whether it's through the state auditor's work or through the Joint Legislative Auditing Committee, or even through this body meeting as a commission or general policy committee meetings, talking about GRU's debt and the general fund transfer. And as part of that, we have all been aware of the amount of debt GRU has, and it being significantly more than other utilities of similar size. And we've had a plan of addressing that debt. What occurred through going through the state auditor's report and going through Joint Legislative Auditing Committee is a direction, and through the City Commission, is a direction to much more aggressively address that debt and to establish a plan to do that. As part of that, GRU and general government, the city manager and the general manager, we've worked very closely together to establish basically a target of what we're going toward to reduce the debt, and then a way to get there, particularly related to the general fund transfer and the level of the general fund transfer. So the state auditor had two major findings related to GRU. One was the level of the debt, and the other one was a method to develop a methodology or a formula to for the general fund transfer. And so the city manager, general manager, and I, our city manager and general manager, we got together and we've been working, us as well as our staff. And what we have done and what we have today is establishing a strong recommendation jointly of both of those items. And so we're going to have a presentation this morning from Mark Benton, our accounting and finance director, and Steve Varvel will jointly give a presentation addressing both of those topics. And what we're looking for as a general manager and city manager is really the direction to continue on the path we're on with establishing that financial goal of debt reduction, and then the methodology for the general fund transfer, so we can then implement our budget or finish our budget so that we can present those back to the commission. So probably said that longer than I needed to say it. I think what we want to do is get to the meat of it and have Mark and Steve start the presentation, and then we can have discussion throughout and be available to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. So let me say before Mr. Benton and Mr. Varvel get started, how much I appreciate, and I know we all do, the enormous effort that has gone into getting us to this place where we're going to have this conversation in a well-informed manner. This has not been easy, and an enormous amount of staff hours have gone into getting us to this point. Lots of commission hours, but nothing in comparison to the staff hours. And before we even get rolling, I just want you all to know that I appreciate the effort that you've put into it from here. And please don't take our questions too personally. Mr. Benton.
I just want to express my appreciation to the general manager for considerably shortening my presentation. We just covered most of it. But I wanted to start off with, back in October of last year, the City Commission, as part of an amendment to the GRU's debt management policy, codified 70% as the target for GRU's capitalization rate metric. And the capitalization rate is boiled down to its simplest terms, is simply the ratio of our net debt to our net capital assets. Given that our existing capitalization rate is about 87%, the 70% target, at least we viewed it as certainly as either a stretch or an aspirational goal, given the magnitude of the net debt that would have to be reduced to get to that 70% level. As a matter of fact, given our net capital asset level, to get to that 70% figure, we would have to reduce approximately $315 million in net debt. As the general manager indicated, we're proposing here a 10-year time frame to reach that 70% level. That strikes a balance between, providing enough time for us to affect such a large change, and what might be considered a reasonable time period by the Auditor General and JLAC and the other folks that are looking at what we're doing here. So if you take into account the principal paydown schedule on our existing debt, and then factor in our 10-year capital improvement plan going forward, and then assume that we are going to fund that capital improvement plan going forward on a 50% debt, 50% equity ratio, the organic pay down of our debt over the next 10 years is right around $91 million. And when I say organic, that means without any external factors or funding sources coming in to affect that. We're looking at $91 million. But with a $315 million required reduction to hit that 70%, that still leaves about $224 million from other funding sources to reach that goal. And there are a variety of potential other sources that we could look at. We're looking at the excess reserves over our cash balance policy that are generated by the recurring rate increases that the Commission approved as part of the 22 budget. GRU budget reductions are another source of that we're going to talk about today. And then the third one is obviously potentially reducing GRU's payments to general government to cover government services. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and he's going to talk about some of that formula methodology.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just for the record, Steve Arville represents my office, General Government. He is the Acting Office of Management and Budget Director for the city.
Good afternoon. Ms. Curry was kind enough to take care of the introduction, but Mr. Mayor, I'm Steve Arvell, and I'm going to go through methodology and rationale behind how the formula was developed. Oops, wrong way. And this really is related to the audit finding, number 2. Consistent methodology, and considering GRUs, the last slide, quite frankly. There were some guiding principles. One, this seems like not a big deal, but the formula should be able to be reduced to writing. To say you have a formula but not be able to point to it seems incongruent, excuse me. It should be tied to a specific revenue stream. It should have a relationship to net income. And while we can have a long discussion on what that means, it shouldn't be more than is available to be transferred. It needs to be repeatable and identifiable by anybody. It is also auditable, by the way. This is really important because both entities have budget planning processes, so it needed to be something that would be a plannable component as we go through those budget processes. There was also what we discussed as staff. This isn't actually from the audit finding. Is that we thought it should have some uses for the time when the net income is above the GSC. And so this will have those in there, and they're pretty simple. They either go to additional debt reduction or as additional equity into future capital projects, so it reduces the need to leverage those projects. But ultimately, it needs to be sustainable for both entities. So we worked independently and then got together. And what I will say is this is different from my 33 years of experience with this, is that we focused on an input methodology and not an outcome-based formula. So we didn't formula to a number. We formula and got a number, okay? So that's a big difference than trying to find a formula that equals to X million of dollars, okay? So this formula has a component that will represent a property tax stream and a franchise fee contribution. And for the formula, we used a total insured values. These are certified and agreed to by our carriers that cover the property. And it was discounted to 70%. And I would like to explain why we chose to discount it. There's a couple of reasons. One, total insured values are replacement cost, not historical cost, not market value, but replacement cost, which is different. And you have to recognize that when you look at the assessed roll, there is a difference in assessed values and market values. There is a markdown from market to get to an assessed. Mark is established externally. Assessment's as much political decision as a market condition, okay? So we discounted it. So the tax is based on that discounted total insured value, and the franchise fee is a component of a system revenue, and it's the electric system revenue. We used a 5%. I'm going to go ahead and address why 5. Research showed that franchise fees vary on electric systems between 3 and 7%. We chose the midpoint. It seemed less objective. Both will use audited or things that have already occurred, meaning it'll be an audited revenue stream or the total insured value for that year's property insurance. They're established up front, so it removes the need to have true-ups in the future. All right, so you're using knowns to get a known. Specifically used for profits, and I use that term as in the quotations, as you can see. Acceleration of debt for the capitalization plan, additional equity, and I think this is consistent with the debt defeasance policy that you all approved, and I think that's actually GRU's bullet point. But, so that's it in writing. We also kind of, whoops, this is a visual. People tend to pick and learn things differently. Some can just read and go, I get it. So this is a visual of it. You can see we used a proxy for a franchise fee, which is essentially an electric franchise fee, and then the proxy for the property tax. So in the end, it generates a number, and it'll use, if used consistently, it'll generate the number on the same basis year over year over year. Am I back to you? Once again, this was developed jointly. It's interesting, we didn't talk about how we were going to get there, but we used very same methodologies. It's franchise fee and property tax, just different benchmarks for it. What this does, it does provide a significant reduction in the government services charge. It's in excess of 50% in the first year. Again, I do think in the long run it provides some stability in the planning process for both entities. It'll be a component that we know going into it, and it provides certainty. So it's not a, well, we need more from the transfer. The formula will generate what the formula will generate, okay? This is Mr. Benton again, because y'all love talking about capitalization.
So the formula that Steve just went over will generate government services contribution of just north of $15 million. So assuming that that is implemented, this slide goes into the components of what would make up that $315 million reduction to get us to a 70% capitalization rate. The top half there, the year-over-year number, represents the difference between what GRU is currently modeling financially for the transfer versus that $15 million figure. Right now, we have $32.2 million budgeted for 24, 30.2 for 25, 28.2 for 26, and 26.2 for 27 and thereafter. And so over that 10-year period, that cumulative difference in what we have budgeted versus what this formula would provide is about just over $119 million. So when you throw in another $76 million from excess reserves over our cash balance policies that are generated by the approved recurring rate increases from 22 through 27 that the commission approved back in the budget of 22, and then just over on a cumulative basis about $28 million in GRU budget reductions over that period, you come to the $224 million that when added to the organic net debt reduction will bring us to that $315 million total within 10 years and in the neighborhood of our 70% capitalization rate target. We've covered all this briefly, but I want to reiterate that there are some significant assumptions as part of this analysis. Number one, that GRU's borrowings over the next 10 years are going to, relatively closely conform to the capital improvement plan budgets that we received as part of the next 10-year CIP from the departments, and that those plans will be funded on a 50% debt, 50% equity basis. As we've said before, it may not be a real popular thing to restate, but we'll be coming before the commission in the future, just as we have in the past with more borrowings, with more new debt. But that 10-year plan, we're planning to cover half through debt, half through internal equity. There are no IRP or plant decommissioning costs included in that 10-year capital plan. And we've had discussions here recently about the fact that the general manager is going to be coming back to you during the 24 budget process with any adjustments that we determine to be necessary to GRUCOM, and those will have to be incorporated into the financials for the other systems. And then finally, we mentioned this before, but that $76 million in excess reserves over and above our cash balance policy targets are the result of those recurring rate increases. And for that $76 million to be available, they've got to stay in place as they were approved back in 22. So at the end of the day, the general manager and the city manager are jointly recommending the formula methodology that Mr. Varvell covered that generates just north of $15 million in a government services contribution in fiscal year 24 and in the years. That formula will stay in place in the years following. And as we mentioned, we're also asking to approve the staff's proposal that we reach that 70% capitalization rate target over a 10-year period. And when you combine the potential GSC reductions with the excess reserves and the GRU budget reductions, that should allow us to reach that target within 10 years. So that's all we've got formally prepared, but of course we're happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Madam Manager, did you want to follow up with anything on there?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Mr. General Manager, anything?
So, Mark, I'm sorry, do you mind going to the very last slide? I think there's one more that has formal recommendations.
I thought we might hold on that last one until the commission discusses.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm good with that. So if we want to have if y'all want to have discussion, if questions, this might be good, and we can kind of go back to the next steps.
I agree that it would be a good time to have a discussion, yet I see no lights. So, and there's one, Commissioner Eastman.
Thanks. I first would like to thank staff. This has been so many years in the making. I am a new commissioner, been here 3 months, and I've spent a little while digging into the history of discussions related to the general funds transfer or general government services contribution. Got to get that into my lexicon now. It is goes back a long way. I found back in '88 we had a 5% fee on electric and wastewater. That these discussions had, really been in depth. They have been at times adversarial, and it's great to see us come together. And I like the way where you guys have fallen on this, which is that we are essentially, when I see the history of this and how we talk about it, it goes down to if GRU were a private investor-owned utility, what would it be paying the government and what would it be returning to its investors, right? So there would always be property taxes and there would always be franchise fees. That is true whether GRU was Florida Power and Light or Duke, or whether it is owned by us, or whether GRU was a private entity. And then we've also been collecting a dividend on top of that. When I do dig into that history, I see some interesting questions related to so the last time I saw that we had really dug into this in any way, back in 2021, we had hired an outside entity that had looked at, that they said, that was brought in to, balance the needs of general government to have consistent finances with GRU's ability to pay those consistent finances. And they computed what a franchise fee would be, as well as a dividend, franchise fee, property taxes, and a dividend would be. And their taxes and franchise fee came out to, I think it was 8.9 million in taxes in 2023 and 17.6 million in franchise fees, which is significantly higher than what we have here. I'm just curious, some of the, I appreciate that this is, opaque at times, but I kind of want to just ask some questions about the discrepancy. That's about a $10 million discrepancy that I'm seeing there related to the taxes and the franchise fees. So I guess starting off with, you chose insured value for the property taxes. Can you go into that a little bit more and what the kind of decision making was on that?
Well, first thing we do is we look to see if there's any decent data on the the property appraiser's roles, and there just isn't. Excuse me. So I looked at total insured values because, quite frankly, it's what I'm familiar with in my role in risk management from a property and loss control. So I know what we value those replacement cost assets at. So it was something that I could easily pull the GRU property out, that anybody could if they wanted to get to the total. Mr. Benton started with net book value, I think probably for the same reason. It's what you were familiar with and you had access to. Because we did this independently. I didn't look at the last consultant's report because I didn't want to be skewed by what, quite frankly, ended up looking for a formula that gave you the number you wanted, because that wasn't the method, that wasn't the way I approached it, and I don't think that's the way Mr. Benton approached it either. So I didn't want to be skewed by how other people looked at it.
Right.
So,
If I might add, we did get information from the property appraiser's office, so it's not that we did not have access to it. We did get that information from them.
Right.
yeah, it just wasn't really reflective of the values of those property when you compared it to either historical value or what its insured value was.
Right, but so the insured value is looking primarily at the, I guess in property, like the tangible property or the like the actual buildings that sit on that property, correct? Does that include?
That is what it looked like. It did not really account for what I like to what we refer to as contents in an insured product, which for power producing assets, that's where all the value is. It's in the content. It's the turbine. It's the boiler. It's everything that makes your light switch go on. That's where it does. So I also think that is very difficult for a property appraiser to value, because there are specialized firms that come in and do value assessments on highly protected property, and that's what it's called in the industry, okay?
Yeah, and then, so it's, but that doesn't, there's, I think I found there's about 4,000 acres of land that is on GRU's balance sheet, but that wouldn't include the value of those 4,000. You can't insure land, correct? That wouldn't be included in that.
Well, one, you wouldn't want to pay you wouldn't want to pay the premium on the value of that land either,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor. So, but no, land is not, land isn't going to be damaged by a covered peril.
Right.
And that's what you insure, those assets that are subject to a covered peril.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Mayor, yeah, one of the items that you mentioned was the value of a property tax, a proxy property tax and franchise, if in fact they were in place. And I believe the calculation for the approximation on the property tax side was maybe $5 million of the 15, and on the franchise fee side, it would have generated about 10 million. So that's where the 15 plus comes from.
Right, right. But that, I mean, and I'm comfortable with, I mean, just to be very clear here, we all voted to say that we wanted to make bold moves, that we wanted to ensure that we were paying down the debt. We were taking this very seriously. I also just want to make sure that, that as we are talking about this, we're also remembering that this is going to be a formula that outlives everyone that's sitting up here on this commission. I mean, this is going to be likely the formula for the foreseeable future, particularly as we're negotiating with, potentially other governance structures within GRU. And so I want to make sure that we have something that makes sense. And to me, even if I am happy to have the dividend taken down, I'm even happy to go into what may be a reasonable position to take on reducing the overall what tax liability GRU would have normally. So essentially cutting GRU's taxes to make sure that we get into that. But I also just want to make sure that we have something that is consistent and is fair for all different sides. So, and then, so on the franchise fee as well, you said that you did 5% because it's somewhere between 3 and 7%. Do we know do we have a state average for, I guess, the electric side of the franchise fees?
I didn't, but you saw a pattern. The larger the system, kind of the lower the franchise fee was.
Okay.
So, and I say the system contained within those municipalities.
Okay. It was sort of tricky. I found that the Florida Municipal Electric Association has a 6% franchise fee is what they kind of cite as their state average, and then we also did, and then this is of course 5%. So this is kind of a reduction from that, which I think is part of the discrepancy. We also didn't do a franchise fee, I see, on any of the other systems. So water, wastewater, or natural gas. Is there a reason why we didn't choose to place an industry average or industry standard franchise fee on those?
Yeah, we chose to use the electric system only because it's while there are franchise fees in other water and wastewater systems, it's much more typical to see an electric system franchise fee than it is water and wastewater. That's why we elected to use only the electric system.
Okay. And I appreciate all the bold moves here. It seems like if there was a question there, we leaned more toward putting more onto the balance sheets of paying down GRU debt than in the other direction. But I worry about valuing our utility to a point where, in my estimation, it looks like we would be making that the city of Gainesville and the residents of the city of Gainesville would be benefiting more if the utility were not under the city of Gainesville and were a private utility. And if that is the long-term look of the utility, then I don't like where that necessarily puts us. Like if an outside consultant said that there would be $25 million in franchise fees and taxes that were coming to the city if this were a private utility, and we're now valuing it at about $15 million, the long-term impacts of that, what does that mean for the utility that's owned by the people it serves? And so I've really struggled with this because I really want to bring forward those bold moves that we have all committed to up here, while also balancing out what is a fair and reasonable thing and what looks at the long-term implications of GRU as a utility that is publicly owned by the people here in the city. So I have some more questions, but I'll let my fellow commissioners speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eastman. Commissioner Book. I'm sorry. It was Commissioner Wilson. Pushed the button too many times there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the same question about the electric utility, but I think I knew the answer. That's a little more common for franchise fee in the electric utility. I did have a question about that, and some of this was kind of answered with the differentiation between taxable or the insured value on assets that are that aren't just land, but if those assets that are land, like the power district, if we sell those, will that change what we think that the proxy for property tax would be? Is there any, for instance, the power district, is that part of the assets that are insured, that are part of that number, or will this allow us to potentially, let's say, sell off part of the power district, and we wouldn't have a real change, not even talking about a one-for-one from the proxy property tax to actual property tax, because that's not in the proxy for property tax, because it's not a plant, it's not power lines. I mean, there is some infrastructure there, but basically it's land, right? Or not?
When GRU kind of abandoned those as usable structures, excuse me, they're still on the list. They're just reduced largely to demolition and cleanup value.
Except perhaps the building that is useful and the power. The name's sliding past me. The one that has been refurbished and
Fleet
used.
building.
No.
Peoria is a different listing. It's listed that the Catalyst building
Catalyst.
is
sorry.
a different listing. Yeah, it's not. Well, it's on the footprint. It is a vertical structure that has real value, so it
Does
is
it have,
listed.
and it has insured value.
Yes.
So maybe this helps me understand. The other portions of it, if we sell it, that's not going to reduce the amount in the property proxy for property tax. If we sell the Catalyst building, then I do want to understand, do we expect that it would be kind of a one-for-one from proxy property to potentially property tax?
The Catalyst building is not a utility asset. The Catalyst building is a city asset, and it
Thank
would
you
not
for-
impact that at all.
Thank you for that.
All right.
Thank you.
Took
for
me a
that.
while to tumble to that too. So.
Yeah, no, I know I've heard that once back when it was dealt with. Okay, I'll say that I do, to Commissioner Eastman's point, about if there was a dividend, sometimes, a company has to take the dividends and it's reinvested. So the thing is that, in essence, what kind of feels like, and it's a lot of work by our staff, it does feel very formulaic, which I believe, is what we're being asked to do. And that I've always kind of thought of the general fund transfers, partially that idea of a dividend. What would be coming back if it was a different company, a private company that owned and operated. Though I do know sometimes a company, rather than giving a dividend out to all the shareholders, in this case, in some form of a rate or reinvestment into other city departments, that sometimes you just got to go after debt or whatever it is. So that kind of makes sense. But I agree with Commissioner Eastman that I'm a little worried about when we start to value it this way and we put these numbers on the books. And the example given is kind of a clear one. If we say currently, or in the future, a government services contribution is 15 million, but we could get 25 million if GRU is sold. I don't know that particularly the electric utility. I don't know if that's the argument you'll hear from up here in the future, but I definitely think that frankly, a GRU authority board that is not appointed by city people up here, that may be the only argument they see. They just see a real simple, because of what we change here. So I am also worried about how it looks, because those numbers are sometimes hard to go back to and say, well, but that's only because of this, that's only because of this, that's only because of this. All of these decisions, some of it made really at the behest of people who are not elected here in this city. I am a little worried about that, so I appreciate that. I think it's all the questions I have for now, but were you going to add to it?
I wanted to add some commentary on what Commissioner Eastman, Commissioner Willetts brought up about a dividend, because as Commissioner Eastman has clearly done his research on the history of the GFT, the general fund transfer has always been represented as a proxy for property tax, franchise fees, and return to shareholders. In this instance, we looked at that, But there are instances where, when an IOU, an independently operated utility, or any company for that matter, rather than giving a dividend, will, buy back their own stock. The cost reductions here are going back into buying GRU debt. We looked at that as essentially the replacement piece for a, quote, shareholder dividend. We're buying back our own stock, we're reducing our debt. So we did look at that. We didn't ignore it. We took it into consideration, but we felt like that was an appropriate substitution.
That's all I have for now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Willetts. Commissioner Book. Background.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I do also appreciate the collaboration between both the general government side and the GRU side. It kind of moves us towards what I like to call is objectivity. And as Commissioner Eastman talked about, it also takes things out of our decision-making capacity and changing things and going up and down as it relates to things. And so it provides some stability in that regard, even though it's dramatic decrease. Can we go back to the slide that kind of indicates our various figures? I think it's back one slide, Mr. Benton. There you go.
This one?
Right, so if I'm understanding correct, I think it's probably important for the record, we're talking about a $15.3 million general government, general services contribution. Do I have that right? GSC as opposed to GFT? And that, I think, really important to know is that is a decrease, a dramatic decrease from what figure which we would have gotten over the next few years and what was kind of previously budgeted. Can we talk a little bit about that?
For the current year, I can say for general fund, it's $34,285,000 for current year. For the current year, and it would reduce $2 million for the 24 fiscal year.
Yeah, so what you're seeing, I'll just add to that, what you're seeing on the screen there is each year, as it goes from contribution to debt, goes from 16.7 to 14.7 to 12.7 to 10.7, is that acknowledgement of the $2 million per year reduction that we were currently on through 2027. So it's 34.28 this year. It was going to be 32.28 next year, and then 30. So that is acknowledging that reduction.
And what that also shows is the $119,830,000, that is the total. There is the contribution that would have. It's a general government contribution, so to speak, because that is basically, I think, representative of what we would have put in. Is that right?
It is. That was the point that I was going to make. The string of figures you see there, starting with 16.7 million, going down to the 10.7 million, that is essentially the reduction in revenue that the general fund is going to see through the implementation of this transfer on an annual basis over the next 10 years.
And I think the comment then is, so it's dramatically larger of a debt defeasance and assistance in GRU becoming stable. And on the city side, what it means is these hard, painful things, many of which we've done already, which is services and programs and persons and freezes on positions. And this all takes that into account. And my understanding in looking at the manager and the general manager is now this starts the process where, depending upon what we do today, we build out the budget based on this figure. That is correct. Is that accurate? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Commissioner Chestnut.
Mr. Mayor, I want to go to the franchise fee. And I think what you said, Florida municipal charges between 5 to 7%. Do we have other franchise fees that we charge here today? I know we have one on cable.
We used to.
We don't have that one anymore. So we don't have any franchise fees.
Correct.
We get a fee from Duke, but not a franchise.
Right.
It's a utility tax.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you. The JLAG asked for bold moves. I think we're taking a bold move. This by paying down our debt by hundreds of millions of dollars over 10 years. I think shows our commitment and our sincerity in trying to address the debt stabilization. Now, it may not be all that everyone wants, but this is, I think, a very serious commitment that we're taking. And I hope that we all join in today in adopting this policy, because it provides a roadmap for future commissions, because it's never been done before. And I think that this is a serious step, and it is a bold step. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Commissioner Eastman, I'm going to weigh in a little bit before I roll back around to you. I do want to add a little more history to this. I completely agree with what Commissioner Chestnut said, that we were asked to make bold moves. This is bold. This will cause, as others have alluded to, as Commissioner Book alluded, it will cause major rethinking of the general government budget. I mean, it's a big deal. Don't think that it's not. We are finally in a position where, again, I applaud staff for bringing this forward. We had asked as a commission back in 20 or 21, and I think in years even prior to that, for charter officers to bring us a formula, very specifically, and it just never happened. We even hired, as has been alluded, a consultant, because we had two charter officers who would not bring us a formula. We said, bring in a consultant if you can't do it. Still, we did not get one. So the $2 million multi-year reduction, $2 million a year for however long that was through 2027, was a solution arrived at by commissioners on the fly because we had to make a decision. At the time, that was lauded from charter officers as bold. We have to do something far more drastic, and this is that. This cuts what had been intended as a general fund transfer in half, by more than half, for the coming year. That's a big hole in the general government budget. That is actual services that we won't be able to provide, probably. That is actual millage rate that people who live inside the city limits will be asked, probably, to shoulder. So this is a very real thing. It is something that is going to have consequences for many years, but hopefully the positive consequence is that we will have a utility that will be better off financially. And that means to you, anybody watching who is a City of Gainesville resident or a GRU user, that at some point in the future, that could increase our bond rating, and that would mean that we would pay less in interest, which means you would pay less in rates and fees. That's the idea behind this, to eventually create a utility that at some point down the road can charge you less as a user for the services that are offered. In the meantime, the money doesn't just go away, it has to be shouldered otherwise or not spent. So that's where we're coming from. I do appreciate everything that has gone into this because it has been hard. I would ask that we consider going forward, when we talk about the long-term impacts here, this is pretty close. If we passed something like this, it would be pretty close to in stone. But a thing that we could enshrine in here is something like an opportunity for when we reach 70% capitalization, for that to trigger the commission to reappraise the formula. If that happened in 10 years, that would be a request to rethink it in 10 years. If it happened in 12 years, then that's when we would do it. If it happened in 8 years, that's when we would do it. Just a thought to put out there, because there are very few formulas that should last forever, and this gives a trigger for when it might be reconsidered if we did that. There'll be more to say about it, but we have a couple lights, and then we'll go to anyone from the public who is here to speak on it. Commissioner Eastman.
Thank you. I wanted to leap off of what some folks were talking about, how aggressive of a cut this is, because I know it's odd for me as a new commissioner to even wrap my head around the size of cuts that we were talking about. And so one of the ways I've tried to do that is as looking through the history of the GFT, how this compares to previous requests of cuts from the GFT. And as far as I can tell, a lot of these discussions, this started back in 2019. There was a report, GRU at the Crossroads, that called for a $6 million a year cut. And that started all the rest of the stuff that occurred, that brought in the consultant. This is $19 million that we're talking about here. This is 3 times the size of the cut that caused that entire discussion about all of this. This is larger than anything that's ever been discussed related to the GFT, or as far as I know, cuts in government. Steve, you were here back in 2008 during the recession. And I asked you this before, but do you know roughly, I mean, what were the cuts that occurred during the recession that I think everyone who's worked here for any period of time, you hear from staff just the impacts of those cuts? What did that look like back then?
Well, they varied. We used different tools to kind of minimize the human impact. We offered some early retirement incentives. We offered some separation incentives. So it minimized the human component and gave us some opportunity to right side. Most of those cuts came from the administrative service areas, not from operations. We also see the results of taking too much out of the administrative side of an organization over time. When you lose institutional knowledge and you have less people to do the work, quite frankly, doesn't always get done, right? So, but there was some revenue enhancements, and I think the general fund transfer was one of those when the housing market went down. But we did it over time. We did 2 years of incentives to kind of, but it was over 85 positions that were eliminated. I think the human component of it was somewhere between 5 and 7, as I recall, that were actually laid off. 2, though, were related to the state cutting SHIP funding significantly because they were funded through the SHIP program. That doesn't make it any easier to pass that on to somebody or to let them know they're not going to be employed after October 1 of whatever year. But it changed. It left some long-term changes that didn't work out so well in the long run, quite frankly.
And how did those, in terms of apples to apples, how did those cut? How did what was the financial cut as compared to this one? Not to put you on the spot because I didn't ask you this ahead of time.
So I originally thought it was a lot more than it was. I went back and looked, but it was about $4 or $5 million because of the revenue side. But as a percentage of the general fund, this is significantly more than that.
So at least in recent history, this is by far the largest cut, the largest austerity measures we have ever taken as a city. I was able to also compare, using some data out there, what our general fund transfer looks like in comparison to other municipally owned utilities. Right now we're at 9.6%, which is relatively low for a municipal utility. Tallahassee's is at 6. Oh, we will go down to 3.9% if this gets accepted, which is about a quarter of Tallahassee's as a percentage. A third of Lakeland's, half of Kissimmee's, half of Jacksonville's. It is, we would have one of the lowest general fund transfers of any generating municipal utility that I've been able to find. I mean, this is, this shouldn't be downplayed at all, the extent to all of this. I want to move forward with this. I would like for us to consider, though, bringing up, doing some kind of minimal franchise fee on water. That does seem to be a very common thing that gets done. And then just looking at adjusting the electric side to just being the state average. I think we are leaving a lot on the table in terms of not taxing any of those 4,000 acres of land that we're talking about, in terms of, a number of other things that we seemingly are leaving out of this. But I think just bringing that up to some kind of a level that is that doesn't devalue our utility to the extent that it appears to me like we are, will at least, will give us something that is a little fairer while still being an incredibly bold and incredibly deep cut to, and the largest austerity that we've ever done as a city. But I'll hear from my colleagues and see what they think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you. It's just going a bit further than that, but now you've intrigued me with the water, with the water fee. Mr. Mayor, what is your thinking in terms of adopting this with some stability? Should this be done by ordinance, resolution, or what's going to have the long-term effect?
I think we could just do it by resolution. And I don't think, there is nothing that is a guarantee. I mean, a future commission 5 years down the road could change an ordinance, or they could pass a new resolution. I don't think there's anything that is a
Okay.
long-term guarantee.
Attorney. Okay.
Mayor, Commissioners, yep, Mayor, I think stated it.
Told you we have to weigh in.
Correct. So yeah, I think that's just up to the discretion of the commission. Either one can, of course, be adjusted by future commissions. And, you know, not to mention different state involvement. So, yeah, I think it's just up to how much process you want to impose on the getting that established, including then, therefore, the process to amend it in the future.
All right, so thank you. So looking at the Florida Electric Municipal Organization, do you have figures on their taxation, if you will, on water, or their franchise fee on water? Anyone else has a franchise fee there?
I don't have the FMEA data on water. Most of the water systems out there that do have a franchise fee are generally in the range of 3%. They're lower than the electric franchise fees. So, off the top of my head, without doing that research, I would assume that would be the typical number that you would see.
Well, okay, thank you. Well, I would not want to delay passage of this resolution today, our recommendation today, but perhaps we could have someone bring back the figures for water for us, because since it's not, and we would still be able to adjust the resolution.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Commissioner Willits.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we get off of that, I think it's, even if we don't look at it, right now, today at this meeting, I think it's valuable to, in our record, of course, have talked about this, but perhaps even as communication to JLAC about things we have considered, because in some sense, if we are leaving things on the table, that there's a decent argument that we could, for a franchise fee, in essence, look at water or other forms of valuation. I think those are important things that we should mention, because we're not just doing this merely for what we think, unfortunately, or merely for what our residents and our voters and our users of GRU think. We are doing it to some degree for auditors and legislators who they haven't given us exactly what they want. But so when we come back to them, I think it is important that we say, even if we don't, we also looked at whatever it is percentage that would be in essence for franchise fee for water, or that we wanted to include some sort of evaluation of all of our land that is not in the current proxy for property tax formula. So I do think that even if we don't, that those are things I would definitely like communicated to JLAC and communicated, definitely communicated to JLAC. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, I'll see you for the lights. So, Madam Clerk, let's hear from the public if anyone is here to speak on it.
Mr. Mayor, I have one speaker, Mr. Donald Shepard.
Mr. Shepard, come on up.
My name is Donald Shepard, and I would like to touch on several options. I'd like to ask a question is, have you had anything from Tallahassee as far as the breakdown of the commissioners that'll be staying and the commissioners will be going? What people do we have that are being removed from our board? That's one of my questions. The fire assessment fee, that's been an outlaw item in which has been collected throughout the years. That there, I feel, as people's representative, that needs to be mailed back to the people, that money. And with a question that it may be bankrupt in the city. It's not a question of whether it's bankrupt in the city. Take out the loan and pay it to these people because they deserve that, and it is money owed to them that has been withheld from their GRU bill and their land lease bill, same as I pay for lamplighter. Why am I paying lamplighter fire assessment fee plus GRU a fire assessment fee? This is many people within the city that's been paying double like this. My other question is about the assets of the revenue. I have different numbers than what has been stated here today. So I'd like to hear more of a clarity on that. This here has been pushed on to each commissioner board since 2006, and why? Nobody has that answer. So why is it that now in this commission it's being proposed in the comments brought in today that this is going to happen again? As you stated, Mayor Harvey Ward, that this would be something that the former commissioners would have to burden. This is not something that we should do. Also, the fair cost and governing, that there, I don't know who's giving it the fair cost of governing of these bills or the fair cost of governing the funds, but I'd like to hear who it is so that we can take and address that before we move forward on any more kicking the can down the road. Estimates. Biomass was the biggest slap in the face to the city, and we, the people, have asked y'all and the mayor before to take and not do that, and it was overlooked. As the fire assessment fees have been overlooked, taxes have been overlooked, but yet you keep asking for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. So to my knowledge, by the way, nobody's being removed at this point. The fire assessment fee is something that continues to be in discussion. Many cities in Florida use it. We are one of those cities. The city of Ocala had some problems with theirs a couple years ago, but that is not, that's Ocala's issue, not ours. And as far as kicking anything down the road, this is the end of the road. I mean, it's been kicked to us and we're handling it. So, and we're handling it because, very specifically, for good or ill, because the Joint Legislative Audit Committee said we had to do it. That's why we are here. So, all right, any more public comment?
No, Mr. Mayor, that's it.
Thank you. All right. Commissioner Eastman.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommended GSE formula with an added option brought back at an upcoming meeting with industry averages for electric, water, wastewater, natural gas, and telecommunications franchise fees, to approve a 10-year period to reach 70% capitalization rate, and to re-review the formula upon reaching the 70% capitalization rate based on the methodology of any of the 3 bond ratings agencies.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Commissioner Willits.
And clarification too.
Gotcha.
Do you want to clarify first?
Yeah, well, why don't you go ahead and
You're approving what is being recommended, Commissioner?
Yeah, and then brought back to us with industry, with options, potentially with changing the franchise fees for electric, water, wastewater, natural gas, and telecommunications at an upcoming meeting.
So this would be a part 2. There would be a part 2 to this, so there's no finality to today's decision regarding the 15.3.
I mean, I would prefer there to, in my preference, there would be, we would move up to the state average of the electric rate and then a 3% water wastewater fee. That to me, and then leave natural gas franchise fees on the table, telecommunications on the table, not go with, I see a number of municipalities that do a 5% water fee. I think 3% makes a lot more sense. I mean, that would be, if I were to vote in 2 weeks, that is how I would be voting. But that to me seems like a fair one that still leaves a lot of taxable income that GRU would be paying were it a private utility, would leave that on the table. So if we're asking for finality, I kind of wanted you guys to have some more background, but I feel like I've done quite a bit of background research and that's where I would feel the most comfortable. And so I'm happy to make that motion instead or to take this off entirely, but that's kind of where I'm standing with it.
Okay, so, Mr. General Manager, I see your light on as well for clarification. Let's go ahead and get that before we.
So,
I think the challenge is, as the city manager said, is we need clear direction in order for us to finalize our budgets. And I just, for clarity, if you change that franchise fee number or you add water, there is no other funding mechanism that comes from that franchise fee. It simply is going to result in a difference in how much GFT is transferred. So in other words, if you say, 3% water, I don't know what the number is, but now the general fund that's transferred is going to be higher. Or if you increase the franchise fee from 5 to 6, the general fund transfer we transfer to general government's going to be higher. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. The result of those changes is going to increase from that 15.3 million to a higher number if we include those elements. And the city manager and I, the reason we need finality is, to be frank, we're almost done with budget. We're going back and redoing budget now. And so we need to have clarity on what the target is we're going to meet in order to get through the summer. And so we really need that as quickly as possible. And then lastly, I will just add, this is where the city manager and I kind of really wrestled back and forth in staff and trying to arrive at a point that made sense to represent the value of GRU to the city being able to then operate with those revenues going forward. And we wrestled with these different levers that were described today, and this is where we're strongly recommending to end. Thanks.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything to that, or are you good?
I may amend the motion, but I kind of want to hear what other folks have to say.
Commissioner Willets.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a lot of work by staff, and I really appreciate it from GRU and general government. I like the idea of calling general services contribution as well, because a lot of things that are formulas, you end up, we call it a contribution, whether it's your retirement contribution or other forms within departments. I like the idea of that. I think it's good. I support calling it a general services government services contribution, should that come up later. I did have a bit of a question about this because, as I'm understanding it, though, if we came back with, in essence, valuing out a franchise fee on other parts of our utility, while it might give general government more money in this next budget cycle to span, which is, I'm sure, we could use it, right? I'm sure you could figure out a way to use it. And so what I'm gathering is it's not so much that finality, particularly general government side, that is, as desperately needed, but the finality on, particularly because I see a GRU expenses reduction. And if we wanted to reach that at the exact 10 years, in essence, we would be reducing what's up there called total available for GSC reductions if we had more on the franchise fee. And to get to the total of 315 million reduction to hit 70%, we would have to, it's got to come from GRU expense reductions or we don't hit it in 10 years. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, I think that's correct. And I just want to put in context, the next slide after this one, GRU, we're going to have several extremely difficult things that we're going to have to juggle in the midst of all of this. And the biggest things are the IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan, and the decommissioning of plants. that is going to require additional reductions in GRU expenses in order to incorporate those going forward. So those are not the only things that we're addressing over the next 10 years. Those two items are not in this $350 million plan, so we're going to have to accommodate those, and that's going to take a significantly heavier lift than we're currently. I just want to make sure that context is in there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. So I'm a little worried about this motion as it exists right now, because what it changes, the finality that is needed is not just merely, particularly general government side budget. I trust you can figure out a way, if we give you more money, you'd figure out a way to spend it, or you'd be able to come back later and we wouldn't need as big of a millage increase potentially or anything like that. But for the finality of this 10-year plan to 70% capitalization ratio, maybe JLAC says, 72 would be fine, but we don't exactly know that, so we have picked something. And so I do fear that this motion is not going to provide enough finality for our entire operation to hit the goals, because we're dealing with, in essence, we've introduced an entire new stakeholder to these conversations in the form of the legislature, which we don't normally have. And so without the legislature here, I would support the motion because I think it makes a lot of sense. But we had to give them something this year that 70 may not be enough. They may come back and say, no, we hated it, we wanted it to be 65. Or they may have said, you went far beyond what we thought, good job, y'all. So I think as the motion is right now, I can't support it. Though all the work that has gone in, I do like the 10-year, when we hit 70% to come back and revisit it. Love that portion of the motion. And as I expressed, I like looking at those other things and getting some numbers for them and using them as real evidence that we've looked in a lot of places, and this is what we left to some degree, when we look at it, this is what we've left on the table that we could have retained for general services or government services contribution, but chose not to. And so that's where I'm at this right now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
That's me.
Commissioner Sacco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to take us back about like 45 minutes where we thanked both charters for working to get this done and figuring out something that they are both comfortable with for their sides of the house. And I can't overstress what that is. They found something that they can both work with, and they will still have to make adjustments, and it will be tough, but they found something that they can work with, and it is staff's recommendation, which is not the motion on the table. I'm not going to support the motion currently here because we tasked a bunch of experts and finance experts with finding an option for us. And I am all for trust but verify and then adjusting as we need. That is not a luxury we have right now. The recommendation that staff put forward, I think, is the one that we need because, as Commissioner Willett says, it is a finality so they can get moving with their budgets. And I think we've looked at the schedule for those, and those are, like, the next one's a couple weeks away. We need to start moving on numbers. They need to know what the final formula will be, the final numbers would be. They can't get this if we keep asking for new information. I have no opposition to looking for that information to reassess this. I think, as Mr. McDermott said, future commissions can reassess this, can get a new resolution, can get a new formula, can do whatever. This year, we can't do that. This is a formula that both of the two largest charters we have given their seal to, have approved it, have recommended it, and can work with it. This is a Jenga tower I really don't want to mess with anymore. Because it's not I don't think it'll help. It will not help them get their budgets figured out. It will not help give our community builders any stability with knowing what is going forward any sooner. And it's not going to help us in Tallahassee because we still don't have a final answer. We have efforts. We don't have an answer. This is an answer if we vote for the staff recommendation today. Again, I have no problem if once we get closer to the end of the budget, if that research information, the bringing back information on water, wastewater, all the other fees, if you want that information for future use to assess it, fine, but to move forward to build fiscal 24, I think the way to go is with staff's recommendation to just have it this way for now. Because they need to be able to do their jobs, and we are holding them back with the current motion on the floor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Sacco. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask Commissioner Eastman if he would consider withdrawing his motion
Oh, okay.
and,
Yep, yep.
and substituting it with the staff's recommendation as it is written.
Yes, I mean, I do want to add in the re-review at 70%.
Could you make that a separate motion?
Sure. I did also, and I think I'm happy to substitute staff's recommendation. I do think that the final formula, though, to Commissioner Willitz's point, should reflect that we are not taxing land at all. We have a 0% franchise fee on telecommunications, a 0% franchise fee on water, a 0% franchise fee on wastewater. That all of the and that we are taking 0% dividend out of GRU. That the formula can have zeros within them, but I do want to have it on the record what exactly we are leaving on the table, which is a lot of what would be given to us under any other formulation. But that doesn't change the formulation, but it does change the final outcome. But I do think that the formula should at least reflect what we're leaving on the table here. Does that, I mean,
Okay, well,
I guess it wouldn't actually change the underlying question here. So yes, I will substitute staff's motion for what I put before, which is the General Policy Committee recommend the GSC formula methodology, and 2, a 10-year plan to reach the 70% target capitalization rate.
so, and I accept that, I seconded that. Okay.
Okay. Second. Or-
No, then you gotta come back later with your other motion.
Great, I'll do that in a bit.
So we have some amendments to the motion. The motion is amended by the motion maker and the seconder to read as written in the agenda.
In the recommendation.
Okay. Commissioner Book.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that also very much because, as has been said, the planning and the time and the capability we have to do now. And we would not have been able to come back in a few weeks with some potential change and still effectively manage our budget cycle, which they're already deep into on both sides of general government and GRU. I do think that the research that Commissioner Eastman has done, I felt like I did quite a bit of research and a lot of reading, and this is what we've been prepping for now about 60-plus days, and yet the information that deals with potential other aspects of what it means for a GRU that's reducing their contribution is very, very innovative. And I think that it does bear review. It just doesn't bear review in this fiscal year, right? So it may be, since Commissioner Eastman is kind of getting that in the record, that we come back, could be to a finance committee or auditing committee in a year or in the fiscal year for fiscal year 2025, and these things have been researched at that time. So we have the capability. There'll also be a lot more clarity at this point because within the next few weeks, we'll have clarity on big point 2. Which is what happens with a bill that's currently been filed. Those two things at least allow us to move forward for these next few months. So I do appreciate the motion as it is on the table, and I thank you for amending it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Cunningham, did you need to add something to that?
Yeah, just for clarity, I want to understand on the motion that the motion is for us to bring back a resolution that codifies this. That's what I think I heard in the discussion. I just wanted to clarify that.
I had asked for a resolution or an ordinance, but the resolution is the recommendation, we'll go with that.
Very
To
good.
bring back a resolution with the staff's recommendation as printed here.
Very good.
Commissioner Eastman, it's your motion. Are you good?
Yes, I'm happy to amend it.
Okay, Commissioner Eastman, did you have anything additional with that, or?
No, I just want to keep reiterating that this is, I thought when we put our charter officers and made them permanent, I said that was the biggest decision that we will have made as a commission, and here I am, been in here 3 months now. This is by far the biggest decision we will make. I mean, this is a $19 million cut to our government that will live beyond anything that we do. And I don't like that we are leaving such a significant amount of what our residents should be receiving as owners of this utility on the table. But I understand sort of where we are and that we need to be moving quickly. So I guess I will support my own motion that I made. But I think everyone out there should recognize that we cannot make up $19 million in millage increases alone, which we shouldn't do because that's going to really hurt. I mean, this is going to mean very severe cuts to things that we care deeply about within our community. And it just this is a hard day. It should weigh heavily on everyone how we're voting on this today. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. Commissioner Deckenwalker.
Thank you very much. I kind of uncharacteristically have been a little silent today, and it's in part to what Commissioner Eastman has just reminded us of, that this is a hard day, and I'll be very candid. I think probably most of us up here have been listening to constituents who have been coming to us with suggestions and ideas for less, for more. What I can appreciate is that our general manager and our city manager have come together and they've given us what they have given us. I think everybody up here has probably lost sleep. I have lost hair. I see it in my brush. Because this is, we're at critical mass, and so it's not lost. I just couldn't let us come to a vote without me at least saying something, because I am not absent from this conversation and I'm not devoid of thought here. It's frightening as we move forward. And I want to thank everybody that's sitting up here, because I don't think it has been or will be easy for any of us even moving forward. So thank you all, and thank you to the staff who have helped to arrive us at this unprecedented place in terms of this formula as we really try to chart a new path forward. So I'll just end my comments there with just a simple thank you, because I did not want it to go unnoted that as a commissioner that I did not thank you for the work that has gone into this and acknowledge the work that still has to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Deckenwalker.
I did want to ask just one question, I'm sorry. Because I do know that staff has been in communication. This, we have all acknowledged, is bold by our accounts. My prayer is that those that have tasked us to make the bold moves feel the same way. And that, I believe, might be a little uncertain. I know they didn't tell us what to do, but in our continued conversations, are they aware of what we're doing here?
So, Mr. Mayor, I can answer that a little bit. So we have met with almost all the JLAC members, I think all but 3, and the local delegates, and part of that discussion was following up with some other discussions we've had as a commission, but also giving them a high level, since we didn't have action, I couldn't say, hey, here's what we're doing, but a high level explanation that we are putting together a plan that over the next 10 years will reduce our debt by hundreds of millions of dollars, and got neutral to favorable responses from JLAC members when we did that. They thought that the feedback was either neutral or positive, that okay, sounds like you guys listened and you came out of there with a good response. But there was no formal vote. There was no hey, thumbs up. But there was that general response from those members when we met with them one-on-one.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I conclude.
Thank you, Commissioner Deckenwalker. Thank you to everyone who has weighed in on this. Just a few sweep up sort of remarks to remind everyone that $315 million figure over a 10-year period, that is what gets us to 70% capitalization with the known knowns. With what we know today, $315 million gets us to 70% capitalization. The plan is to get there over a 10-year period. this does that. Any changes we make in between, if we're agreeing that 70% is the target, then it has to be made up somewhere from one side of the ledger or the other. So I think that brings us to where we are with the formula. We would not be having the conversation as we are having it. We would probably have a more nuanced, less time-driven discussion about this if we have not been directly tasked by the Joint Legislative Audit Committee with finding a formula, period. I mean, that is a reality. I would encourage anyone who has questions about the veracity of that to go back and watch that video again from the JLAC hearing. This is separate and apart from Commissioner Clemens' bill about, or excuse me, Representative Clemens' bill about governance. The JLAC hearing, the chairs, the rotating chairs, directed that this be done, or something like this, that we arrive at a formula and that formula be bold. That is the case. This is bold. This is a big deal. This is going to be hard to figure out. This is not the last meeting that is going to be painful. We are going to have a series of workshops and votes for both the utility budget and the general government budget, and they're going to be uncomfortable. And they're going to be complicated and complex. And I encourage the community to reach out to us and continue to ask questions. It's also okay for you to ask questions of the Joint Legislative Auditing Committee. This is the result of direction, and I want that to be exceptionally clear. We are responding to them as requested to respond to them. You are our bosses. You are their bosses. You deserve communication on this, and you should absolutely receive it. We are all pretty easy to talk to up here, and there will be a lot of those conversations over the coming months. That's our job. We signed up for it, and I'm happy to be here to speak with folks. So with that said, the motion on the table is the staff recommendation to approve the recommended GSC and formula methodology and a 10-year period to reach the 70% target capitalization rate. I do hope we get another motion to give that 10-year trigger, or that 70% trigger rather, but that is the motion on the table right now. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously, Madam Clerk. Commissioner Eastman.
I'd like to make a motion that we re-review the formula upon reaching 70% capitalization rate based on the methodologies of any of the three bond rating agencies.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to trigger an automatic review by the Gainesville City Commission when 70% level is reached. Is there any public comment on that one? Any interest? Okay, all right, anyone up here? I see no lights. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you. I'm not sure if we need a motion on this, but I would like to authorize the mayor to communicate with the JLAC committee on the unanimous approval by the city commission today on this resolution.
With that exception, that's my plan.
Thank
to
you.
do,
Thank you.
by tomorrow morning. So, all right, we have a couple more items here, but I know some members of the media are here specifically to ask questions about this. So I am going to take a short recess until, let's say, 2:40, and at least some of us, or maybe all of us, will be available to members of the media who might have questions. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and call us back into session, only a minute or so behind. We do have a couple more items on the agenda, as well as member comment toward the end there. Madam Clerk, let's go ahead and get started.
Mr. Mayor, our next item is 2023-338, fiscal year 2024 strategic plan discussion, with a recommendation that the General Policy Committee hear an update on the progress towards implementation of the FY 2023 strategic plan and provide direction to the charters for the FY 2024 strategic plan critical needs and high and top priorities.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So at this point going forward, I mean, I'll turn it over to the manager and general manager in a moment, but I know their focus and staff's focus has been on what we were just doing, and their focus from this point forward is going to be on developing budgets. As we think about strategic plans, we have a lot of things in the hopper already through a variety of things that are not about the things we've been talking about. But we've hashed through those pretty well so far, and they all sort of stand on their own, whether they be GCRA or wild spaces or the solar plant discussion. All of that sort of stands on its own. But as far as making changes to the strategic plan going into next year, I'm not sure we have a whole lot of information or capacity for that. But with that said, I'll call on General Manager or City Manager Curry to. Okay, all right. I'll call on
Yeah,
General Manager.
so Mr. Mayor, you have all 6 charters or representatives for them in the room. We worked diligently on the strategic plan last year and trying to really align and prioritize what we need to focus on. And the message that we brought last year was to really focus on some of these main pillars, like where our financials are, some technology, and our people. That hasn't changed. That is still the primary. What we've added to that, or I guess enhanced to that, is GRU's debt, which obviously we just spent the last hour and a half discussing in detail of that. And so our recommendation as charters, we have a couple of slides in the backup. We don't need to go through them. You kind of just articulated. All of the charters, we recognize the importance of continuing to focus on those items this coming year and to try, to be disciplined in addressing those. And I think that is exactly what we're doing. I do want to contextualize, though, in the midst of that, we are still operating the city of Gainesville. Focusing on those as a strategic plan doesn't mean you stop doing all the daily activities it takes to operate the city and the utility. And so the charters, staff, everyone is still focused on doing that every day. But at the high level, strategic planning level, our focus is on those big main items, GRU debt, GG finances, the technology, and the people, employees, and getting the ship kind of righted on all those issues. So with that, if the city manager wants to add anything as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the commission, I think it was in 2020 that a consultant came in and worked on the strategic plan with the commission and with the charters. And it was to cover up, I think, maybe a 15-year period with a focus on, of course, equity and sustainable services, et cetera. And as Mr. Cunningham mentioned, we did spend quite a bit of time last year analyzing where we were with top priorities and high priorities, with a couple of amendments to some of those areas, but with a focus on the financial stability of the city, not knowing where we are now, but last year we were focusing really more on general government because of where we were. With the 21 audit, we were focusing on vacancies throughout the city because they were, of course, impacting the delivery of services, the degree of vacancies that we had. We still do have technology issues that are of major concern, particularly on the general government side. And so we are still dealing with those. But as you mentioned, because of where we are today with JLAC, we really do need to address the financial services in a lot more detail and the impact on services. And so the way I look at it, as we discussed with the commission, is more of a resetting of city government services and how we maintain sustainability over the next at least 5 years, 3 to 5 years, with a reset on how we deliver services based on the types of cuts that we are looking at, or reductions in service, I'll just say that. And so I think that as opposed to an elaborate conversation over several days, as we would usually do, it's pretty clear to us right now where we are and what we need to be focusing on, and that is how to continue to do a good job of delivering services in the face of this kind of the financial constraints that we're facing. And so that is our focus.
Thank you. Commissioner Book.
This is just very brief. I think that there's nothing that I'm going to say that's out of line with what I've heard or what we just did over the last couple hours. When I was thinking about what are the big picture 30,000 foot goals over the next essentially what's going to be 1 to 3 years, budgeting fiscal dominates everything. So we know that, and that was one of the key aspects. The other one that we've already taken on is land use and zoning. And we'll have further discussions about that next week, and probably continue through the year in some other aspects. But I think that's really a second big picture item that we'll have a focus on. And then lastly, what we'll dovetail, I think, with everything that we're doing right now is that the comprehensive plan that has been in the works under an Imagine GNV type of model is going to have to be reimagined within the next 12 to 24 months based on the work that we're doing with probably those other two areas, and really make sure that when we do end up in a position where we're resubmitting that to the state, that it really meets the criteria checkbox by checkbox of what the city says that they need to see in that. And I would conclude. So those would be the big picture items. Again, they align with what I've heard from both the two charters up here, but what I think I've heard and in the meetings that I've had with the other charter members and executive leadership of the city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. So I want to remind everyone, both in the room and watching at home, and believe it or not, we do have lots of people who watch at home. So the things that we do, the services that we offer, the big things that we have already committed to doing, we are still doing those things. When you call 911, you still get a response. When you have a pothole in front of your house, you still need to go to 311 GNV and let us know. We get there, we get it done. The things that you do as a daily interaction with the city of Gainesville are going to continue to be there. Please don't hear that any differently. There are things we're going to have to reconsider over the coming months, but the basic things that happen every day that you expect from a city, you're going to continue to get those services. Things that we've committed to, like the East Side Health and Economic Development Initiative, those things are still rolling. They happen through the GCRA, through Wild Spaces, Public Places. Bulwer Springs renovation, that still happens. It's through Wild Spaces, Public Places. 8th and Waldo, Citizens Field, MLK Complex. And I have a habit of pointing toward the part of the city that these things are in, so bear with me. That's still on the table, again, funded through dedicated funding sources like the GCRA and Wild Spaces. Those things continue to roll on and to exist, and the basic services that you expect from your city are largely going to be there. We put tremendous pressure on staff and on ourselves to make sure that those things happen. That when you walk in the room and flip the switch, the lights come on. That when you turn the tap, the water comes out. Those are things that are going to happen. Now, extra projects, new things, for the next year or two, those are going to be a challenge. And we'll have conversations amongst ourselves about how or if things get funded that are not currently on the table. But I don't want anybody to think that this means that we don't roll fire trucks or police cars, or that we don't, that Westside Park isn't going to be open. By the way, join us at Westside Park tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for ribbon cutting. These things continue to happen because you continue to be a part of this community, and you expect that, and we expect you to expect that. Gainesville is going to continue to be a remarkable place to live, and we're here to ensure that. Please don't hear otherwise. That said, I see no lights. We've heard from the charters on this. Madam Clerk, what's next?
Mr. Mayor, our next item is 2023-361, revision to GRU's FY24 budget calendar with a recommendation that the General Policy Committee approve GRU's amended budget calendar.
Mr. General Manager?
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, basically as this spring has rolled out, we recognize the need for additional budget meetings and slightly change the order of some things because of all the things we've been talking about today. So what we have here is just a revised budget calendar. We typically put this on a consent agenda of a regular commission meeting, but so this is it. These are the dates that we're going to bring the different pieces of the budget and those topics, and they're slightly revised, especially kind of going forward. There's some additional meetings to provide additional information and transparency that was requested from the City Commission.
Very good. Thank you. Is there a motion to accept these?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So the motion and second to accept the calendar as printed before us. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that is the calendar. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, our next item is member comment.
Commissioner Eastman?
Thank you. I guess I wanted to jump in at the strategic plan discussion kind of jumped in front of me, but I wanted to, I appreciated your, what you said to the residents of this community. I also kind of wanted to speak to all of the staff members that are here at the City of Gainesville, because I know that they're watching from home. And as someone who loves cities, that's why I ran, the work that we do here at the City of Gainesville has such a huge impact to everyone. It's from the folks that are making sure that our roads are just well paved so that it's not costing us an arm and a leg to fix the car, which can make a huge difference to your life. But making sure that the roads are safe for people to go onto, the people that work at our parks, the people that keep us safe at the police department and our fire department. What cities do and what we do as a city is so incredibly important. I don't mean to leave off Jerry. I mean, keeping our electricity on is a small miracle. It is amazing that we are able to have a balanced grid that at every single moment there is something burning that is creating that electricity that we're seeing up there. It is from our water to our wastewater. This is a hard time. I think I speak for everyone up here to say just how much we appreciate the work that you do for our city, how much we appreciate and that we are doing everything in our power to make sure that you are taken care of, that you feel respected here within our city, and that that your programs, whether or not, I don't know what will continue, I'm not sure, but everything that we do here is important. It is a core service of our city, and we're going to have to make hard decisions, but we care about every single person that's here, and I hope that we're able to keep some of the great people that are there, and that people aren't thinking this is going to be tough, because right now I hope that our employees are thinking, let's come together, let's work on this, because we have some great people that are here at the City of Gainesville, and I just wanted to let them know how much we appreciate them.
Thank you, Commissioner. I totally agree. We want to make sure that our workers here at the City of Gainesville feel like you are supported. You are supported. Those of us sitting up here making these decisions, we're not making them in a vacuum. We know what we're asking of you. And I would encourage you, reach out if you have questions. Happy to answer what I can, and I will always tell you if I don't know. But I want you to reach out if you have questions. You're part of this community as well. So thank you for that. And yes, I do think it is nothing short of wizardry that when I walk into a room and flip a little plastic switch, lights happen. I'm like, wow, I know that some of you think, well, it happens like this, and that, and the other thing. That's how it works. No, it's wizardry, as far as I'm concerned. All right, I see no further lights. That being the case, we are adjourned. Thank you all for your work.